Good morning. How are you? Seems like everybody's still asleep. I am well, thank you. Can you hear my washing machine? Because I'm washing right now. So if you can hear the washing machine, I would put on my headset. Good morning, Leslie. Hello, darling. Happy Sunday. Okay, good. Thank you. Because I forgot that it will be um, running and folks might hear it in the background. So I'm waiting for my guest to join. Oh, there she is. I'm going to send you a request now, Lana. Oh my God, is it raining?
Not anymore. It
Oh,
was for a
okay.
while.
Good morning.
Morning.
How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. You look so chirpy for a Sunday morning this early.
It's late. It's 10 o'clock.
Oh my God. Well, technically, usually I'm up and about whether I have the life to do or not.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. This is late in my world.
Oh, okay. Thanks for doing agreeing to do this live with me.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Of course, I had to. Like I mentioned to you before, I had you in my thoughts to discuss the work that you're doing
hmm
in regards to wellness with movement. So I just had to decide on the day and time I wanted you to be on.
Yeah.
Of course,
Yeah.
everything with that is spirit led, right? For me.
hmm
So for my guests who are coming on, you know the drill. If you have any questions, feel free to um, put them in the chat. Today I am speaking with Lana A Sealy, and she's in Barbados.
Mm.
Yeah, well, the rest of us out here in the cold.
Is it cold
Yeah.
already?
Huh? It's starting to
Is
get
it cold already?
exaggerated. From the time I gotta like put on socks, it's cold.
Salt weather.
That's bad. From the time I gotta put away my sandals, it's cold. Right. So
Yeah.
today
I
we're
can't
gonna.
say miss that.
I know you don't. Today we're gonna talk to Lana. She has her company in Barbados called Body Mekanix, and she has created this exciting fusion between Pilates and yoga. And I felt it was
hmm
important that, we had this discussion because a lot of times when I'm doing my spiritual readings, it comes up that folks need to incorporate some sort of movement in their life. And
Yeah.
it may not necessarily be going to the gym or CrossFit or anything like that. It sometimes has to be something that is a little bit more subtle and focuses on flexibility and your
hmm
breathing and kind of making that movement aligned nicely with um, 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 aligned nicely with all your elements, and I guess that's where your chakras come into to
hmm
to to play. So
Yeah.
first, before we get into this beautiful fusion you've created, can you tell us, please, what is yoga and what is Pilates, and what's the difference between the two?
That alone is a heavy loaded question.
Well, simplify
So,
it for our folks.
So
Yeah.
if you're getting extremely basic,
Yeah.
very, very basic, yoga is, first of all, they're very similar. And because they're so similar, they're also very different. If you want to break it down like that, for the average Joe, they'll say, well, it's kind of the same thing. You're laying on a mat, a yoga mat, Pilates mat, same thing. But when you break it down to the technique, yoga is a series of poses, and you string that together within class. If you want to break it down extremely simple, it is a series of poses that you have, and you break that down in class. There is a spiritual element to it. There is a storytelling element to it. There's also a very traditional element to it. And now you have different forms of yoga. So you may have hatha yoga, you may have therapeutic yoga, you might have kundalini, a range of different forms of yoga, but it is a series of poses that you do in class, connecting your mind and your body. Pilates is a series of sequences. So it's not just poses, you are moving through the movement. And it is specifically for strengthening your core. That is the main focus and element within Pilates, that you are working on strengthening your core. And I guess you could see it as being a bit more clinical than yoga would be. Yoga would be more spiritual, Pilates would be a bit more clinical, if you break it down very basic and very simple. Yoga does not necessarily focus on that aspect of strength training or training the core.
Okay.
You can do it that way, but traditionally it was not to focus on the core, whereas Pilates was specifically to focus on. So Pilates came about because Joseph Pilates, he had a lot of health issues within his body, and he was also working. He was a soldier, and he was working in the hospital at the time. So they were doing rehabilitative exercises for soldiers who were bedridden. And that's how Pilates came about. So you wanted to be fit and you wanted to exercise because you wanted to get better. But obviously you couldn't go in the gym, you couldn't do gymnastics, you couldn't do dance. So it was structured for somebody who was not fit and able to get up and start moving. And that is very, very basic how Pilates started. And now you have different forms of Pilates as well, where you can do Pilates for dancers, you can do a rehabilitative Pilates or therapeutic Pilates, things like that. So they've both evolved to some extent, but Pilates started from a very clinical perspective, and yoga was more spiritually based from a specific tradition.
So I guess you kind of answered my next question, outside of the fact that if you come for a reading and it pops up in your reading that there needs to be some kind of movement to help you with whatever you're going through, including your spiritual journey, how do you know which exercise is best for you?
Practice, experimenting, feeling it out. Sometimes you might be sometimes someone can guide you in terms of saying, okay, if they are familiar with your injuries or something that's going on in your body, they might say, okay, we'll try this. This might be better for you. Like, example, if you are pregnant, a pre or postnatal class would be better for you rather than a regular yoga class. And maybe you have a back issue, and because of that back issue, maybe start a bit slower with Pilates to figure out where your core and your alignment needs to be before you go into a yoga class and start doing poses that are not going to work for your body.
Right.
So there's a conversation that needs to happen that does not usually happen.
Right.
People tend to take a class that they are familiar with, or a class that they've heard about, or a class that a friend is doing, rather than doing the research for them as to what's the correct class. And then you go to the class and you don't like it. And it's not that it's a bad class, it's that it probably wasn't the right class for you.
Right.
So sometimes you just have to think about things and just really feel out to say, well, I want to try this class, but is this the best class for me? So there's a question that you have to ask yourself. And most people won't necessarily ask themselves that question. They'll ask someone else that question. So if you're interested, I would say try both. Don't just try one and say, oh, I like this, I'm going to stick with it. Try both. And try different instructors. You know, it's an experiment.
Right. You touched on something there that is very important, and something that a lot of people don't do is that even to decide if you're going to do yoga or Pilates, you have to ask yourself a question, right?
Mm-hmm.
That means you have to go inside and say, okay, why am I doing this? Why do I think I need this?
Mm-hmm.
What am I looking for? What results? And some people, they can't even do that.
Yeah, that
So
internal dialogue.
yeah. So even
Mm-hmm.
and I guess this is why with the readings it kind of comes up, because it says, okay, this is the spirit is saying this is what we see in you, and this, look into these two things and to see how it can help you to move forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even, and that is what I like about the practice, because even the decision making part at the beginning of it, you have to go inside
Yeah.
and have a discussion with yourself as to, why am I putting my body through this? You've
Mm-hmm.
created a unique thing here with this fusion of marrying the two practices. Why did you why did you decide to do something like that? That sounds pretty radical to me, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, it was something that I was looking for, and I could not find it. So my background, or my main training, is dance, and in where I was in a dance world, we had to use both Pilates and yoga to help us with injury prevention and rehabilitation. That was actually part of the contract. You had to take care of your body, you had to take care of yourself. And the company provided Pilates, and I was familiar with yoga, so I also did yoga on my own outside. And I found that I needed both things. It wasn't just a case of, I'm just going to do this today and I'm just going to do that tomorrow. I found that I needed both things when I was using my body, and also at the time I was going through some stuff. So I needed some bereavement therapy as well. And I think instead of going straight to bereavement therapy, I started with yoga, and that wasn't enough, and Pilates wasn't enough, and bereavement therapy wasn't enough. But the combination of those things together worked well for me. Might not work well for everybody else, but it worked well for me. And that combination for me was moving in a different way, not just dancing anymore, and not being in a gym and lifting weights, but moving in a way that was not just therapeutic to my joints and therapeutic to my muscles. Having danced my whole life, and now your body's a little achy, so it was not just a case of being therapeutic to your joints and your muscles. I needed something that was also therapeutic to my mind, something that allowed me to focus on my breath. And before I even got to focusing on my breath, it was also realizing that you're not breathing. We don't breathe. We breathe just enough to survive.
Right.
We don't breathe on a regular basis to help with anxiety, or help with stress, or help with that internal dialogue that we were speaking of. The internal dialogue that we are used to right now is that dialogue of uh, of guilt or of pressure. I need to do this. I need to do that. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? That's the internal dialogue that we are used to. We're not used to the internal dialogue of, hey, that's okay. Don't worry about that. And for me, that's where the bereavement came in. It was, I remember I did an exercise, and one of the exercises was speak to the 5-year-old within yourself. So you're not going to scream and shout at a 5-year-old when they do something wrong, or if they're hurting, or if they don't feel well. You're not going to scream at a 5-year-old and say, you need to get up, you need to go to school. You're going to say to a 5-year-old, okay, there, we'll sit down and, have some tea. You'll let them not go to school. You'll take care, you'll nurture a 5-year-old. We don't nurture ourselves. So the internal dialogue of nurturing the 5-year-old in you, the breathing aspect of yoga, and the therapeutic aspect of Pilates, where I'm taking care of my body and checking in on how I'm moving and why I'm moving. That combination of things was gold for me. And I can't see how you could do one without the other. But we don't we don't teach it that way. Traditionally, yoga is taught a certain way, and traditionally, Pilates is taught a certain way. And you don't combine the two because people see them as two separate worlds. And they're not two separate worlds. You know, they're very much different, but yet they're still so similar that they can blend with each other. It's not oil and water.
Right.
But the way we teach it and the way we are taught those things, we use it as oil and water, and it isn't. It's a lovely combination. It really is a lovely combination. How are you doing planks and cores and bridges and, I mean, like, the fancy exercises of yoga, the fancy poses that we now see on Instagram, you know, that's the fancy thing, to do all the poses. How are you getting into those poses and taking a picture for the camera without having an internal dialogue of, you know, move a little bit to the left, move to the right, is this the best thing for me to do today? Do I need to be on my head today? You know, they can't exist without each other, but we're forcing them to exist apart, and that's ego. You know, that's ego. And right now in the Pilates world it's hot in the Pilates world. The Pilates world right now is hot. There is a big conversation going on right now with classical Pilates and contemporary Pilates. And the classical side is what Joseph Pilates taught, and everybody is stuck on, these are the traditional exercises, these things have to continue, and you're not a Pilates instructor, you're not teaching a Pilates class if you're not doing it exactly how Joseph Pilates did it. And then there's a contemporary Pilates where there is a fusion of Pilates and scientific movement, functional movement. That move right now of moving functionally. That there's a fusion that's happening with that in the Pilates world. And those two worlds are fighting like cats and dogs because they're saying that, you know, classical Pilates is it and then contemporary Pilates is it. But it makes no sense. Joseph Pilates he experimented. So why would you stop experimenting? Why would you all of a sudden stop experimenting just to say that you've done classical Pilates? You can't stop experimenting. We can't stop growing, you know? So for me, that growth has to happen by merging, taking the best out of both worlds.
Right.
There's some things in Pilates I don't teach. There's some things in yoga I don't teach. But the combination of the two things that are really, really good, you can allow those things to blend together. And it's really important to know the classical yoga and to know the classical Pilates so that you can experiment with blending the two. You can't just blend them from the beginning. You have to know what you're doing fully before you start experimenting. But if you really and truly know what you're doing fully, as so many people are saying, start experimenting.
Right.
Because there's growth. It's not going to stay the same. And it's the same thing with your mind and with your body. It's not going to stay the same. Some days you need a push. Some days you need to slow down. So that fusion of the two, you have to have that fusion. I think is really important. So that's a long-winded terms. That's why I fuse the two together, because I thought it was really important.
Right. Candy Fab is so saying that's it. She's coming to our class.
Candy, I can't wait for you to come to class. You've been saying that for a while, man. I can pick you up and bring you to class.
Let me see that. Yes? You touched on so many important key things there in describing this fusion, but not only the tug and push and tug and what is going on with Pilates, because that is an energy of old versus new that is taking place across the board with spirituality.
Yeah.
And even in some religious forms.
And politically. It's also happened politically.
Hello.
Right. It's everywhere. It's happening everywhere.
Yeah. So it's like this clash, because even in ATRs being African traditional religions, you have the older folks who believe that you got to sit at the elders' feet to learn and understand the faith, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a must. I'm not dismissing that. But these young folks now, before they get into anything and want to sit down anywhere, first they're going to tell you they ain't got time, right? But they first want to inquire as to what it is, right? And the old people's like, nah, we ain't inquiring in nothing. this is what it is, this is what you got to do. So it's fascinating to see that even little old Pilates is having that clash.
I
My
mean, and this clash is hot. I mean, you can search online. This clash is happening right now, and it is hot. People are shaming others, and
yeah,
people are getting, it is ridiculous
yeah,
how
yeah,
hot it is
yeah.
right now,
And listen, anything having to do with spirit, it
Hmm.
just like politics, unfortunately, gets people
Hmm.
into a mind space of where they just lose their grace, as
Yeah.
well people would say. How many
Well,
times a
ego
week?
takes over.
Yes, ego. How many times a
Hmm.
week would you recommend someone do a class?
Um, I would say twice a week is beneficial because you have a chance to go back at it. You go to class, you figure stuff out, and then you get to go back at it. That is not practical for everyone. If you do it once a week, I would say try to do it once a week consistently. Give it time. So if you're going to do it once a week, try once a week for 6 weeks, or maybe do twice a week. So sometimes, the information is new and the language is new. So you might not get it 100% your first time.
Mm-hmm.
So you do it on Tuesday and you kind of sort of got it. But then when you come again on Thursday,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of reiterate what you just did and it makes sense in a different way.
Right.
So twice a week, I would say, is ideal. I mean, if you have time, 3, 4 times a week is wonderful, but that's not realistic for everybody. Realistically, it might just be once a week. But if you do it once a week, do it consistently. Try it to 4 to 6 weeks every week, just to give yourself a chance to make sense of it.
Right.
Because sometimes you go in there and you might be busy from work or your mind is not in it. It doesn't mean that it was not the right class for you. It just meant that you might not have been there. You might not have been fully present.
Mentally, yeah, because it's a mental
And
thing. You have to position yourself for to really get it going.
yeah, I mean, something as simple as left and right. Really and truly. You've been sitting out at a desk all day long doing work, and now all of a sudden I'm telling you, lift your right arm up and your left hand up, and you're like, what?
Right.
And very often I see people doing this on their mat, like, what is left?
Yeah, me,
And they take like
me,
2 seconds.
me.
By the time they've figured out what left is, the exercise has gone on already.
Yeah.
So you gotta give yourself a chance. You gotta give yourself a chance. And I would say realistically start with twice a week. If that can't work, at least do once a week for now.
Yeah. All right. So let me
Yeah.
do some house cleaning before we move on because I started without getting your information. So you are at Body Mekanix, Mekanics.
Body_Mekanix.
Underscore. Okay. I'm
Yeah.
going to pin her page up so you guys could check her page out. Someone was asking if you are
Hi, Mark.
hi Mark, if you offer online classes, and you do.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks to Corona.
Oh, well, where we asked that too is because I just pinned Lana's page up so you can guys go and follow her, and you can message her about, and her website is also on her IG page. She's
Yeah,
based in
everything is there.
Barbados, by the way, because some of you think that she's here in New York with me.
Not anymore.
Not anymore, right? But she's based in Barbados, but she offers classes online, right? And this is one of the reasons too. I, I make sure that these services that we discuss are online. And one, and
So I gotta.
two, that the service providers can accept payment from for global. So she has a PayPal account,
Yeah.
right?
So I just corrected your spelling of Body
Oh,
Mekanix.
again, I always spell it wrong. Okay, wait.
It's
So let
Anix.
me delete that. Let me start over. Tracy, why are you showing up with a face that is not happy? Oh, you want to be in Barbados?
She can come.
Listen, don't encourage her. She would text me. Guess where I am?
You can come. You might have to quarantine, but you're fine after
Right.
that.
Here. Okay, I think I got it now. There we go.
Yeah,
Sorry
there we
about
go.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no problem.
Um, okay. What should we look for when picking an instructor and or a studio? What I want to go and pick a class. What should I look for in an instructor?
You want an instructor that knows what they're speaking about, not just poses, but also an instructor that is familiar with the body anatomically, and they know and understand how to give modifications. Modifications are really important. So for somebody coming into class with lower back pain, you don't know why that person has lower back pain. It could be that they've been sitting all day. It could be that they have a leg length discrepancy, meaning that one leg is slightly longer than the other. It could be a slip disc. It could be a herniation. You have no idea why that person has lower back pain, so you can't ignore it. So you need an instructor who is okay with slowing things down and okay with helping you through things in your body. So if you say from the beginning, I have this, this, and this, the instructor should be able to say, okay, well, we'll help you with your modifications. Or they should be able to say, this is not the best class for you. Try a different class. Try this class instead. And you should also have an instructor who's comfortable to say, I am not sure how to handle this, but this instructor does.
Right.
So you have to be comfortable with that. You need to be comfortable with your studio. You want a studio that's inclusive of everybody. You want a studio and an instructor who is going to know how to work with your body. Every person's body is not the same. And it's difficult to find those things off the bat. Sometimes you have to experiment. Sometimes you have to take that bad class to realize, oh, that class isn't so good. Let me not go there again. So again, as I said, it is experimenting, because every instructor thinks that they're the best instructor. They know what they know. Not every instructor realizes that there's a lot of stuff that they don't know.
Yeah.
So it is tricky to find a good class and to find a good instructor. So you do have to play around. You do have to look around. And that internal dialogue helps. It might be the fanciest, cutest class on Instagram, but when you go there, you might not feel right. Pay attention to that feeling.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not right for you. And it might be a class that you go there and the studio looks a little shabby, but that doesn't mean that the teacher can't teach really good. I mean, it doesn't mean that it's not the right place for you. So the external stuff, the bells and whistles, that's not what you're looking at. You're looking at the person who is going to help you.
Okay.
And how they're going to help you. Yeah, so pay attention to your teacher more so than the fancy studio.
Right. I want to give a shout out to your skincare regimen. Your face is like glowing.
Lotus Touch Beauty.
You gotta talk about that. I'm like, skin.
Thank you.
What type of diet is recommended once you decide to get into this what first of all, would you call yoga and Pilates an exercise regimen? Would you do that?
It can be.
Okay.
It can be. It can be taught in such a way.
Right.
Traditionally, Pilates is probably more of a therapeutic or clinical regimen. Okay. And the same thing with yoga. Whereas now there's so many different types of Pilates and yoga that yes, you can call that an exercise regimen, but part of it. Right. So don't just go to Pilates and do hundreds and abs and stretch and say that you're exercising. Mm-hmm. If you're a young person, that's not enough. You still need some form of cardio. You still need something else. So it is a good complement to another form of exercise.
Okay. So what diet would you recommend? Should they go into some kind of start to maybe not eliminate certain foods, but you do less of it, change up some things, drink more water? What do you recommend?
So if you're gonna do it, do it. If you're gonna try to make some changes to your mind and your body, you have to pay attention to the gut as well. So it is helpful to kind of be a bit more aware of what you're putting in your body. Do you have to be a vegan? No. Some people in the yoga world will say that. It is helpful. It is a nice change. It is nice to experiment with it. Is it necessary? No, it isn't. And with everything else, you know, you do it in stages. You cut some things out and you add a bit more things, and you start to pay attention. When you start to pay attention to how your body feels, the natural step after that is to pay attention to what you start to put into your body. And that doesn't mean you have to stop going out on weekends. That doesn't mean you have to stop eating bread. It doesn't mean you have to stop drinking. Maybe you just pay attention to what you're doing, how you're doing it, when you're doing it, how often you're doing it. You know, and when you start to make those changes, then it trickles down, and you start paying more and more attention to it and adjusting it more, get a little more serious with adjusting it. So it is tricky to just give a diet. I am a bit particular with my diet, but doesn't mean that everybody in class has to be. It certainly is helpful. And I try to guide my clients towards that. You know, well, like for example, we're going to start a cleanse with Chantel. We're going to do a cleanse on the 15th of October. So because I'm doing it, I'm like, hey, I'm doing this cleanse. Who wants to join me?
Right.
You know, so I've put that out there to my clients that they can join me on it. But am I going to say, you need to be cleansed and take my class? No, because that's not my business to tell you that.
Right.
You know, I can lead by example and I can give you examples of it, but it's not my business to tell you that. But it is helpful when you change your diet and you start exercising as well. The combination of the two really is helpful. But people usually make that shift for themselves when they start to feel good about their body. That shift naturally happens. Okay, well, yeah, that shift happens naturally.
It is true. And that leads me to the next question. So say I sign up for your class and I've decided to put in at least 2 classes a week, right? How soon, just hypothetically, because as you said, everybody's body is different. How soon would I see changes to my body, and what kind of changes would you probably start to see first or feel first? Would I become more flexible? You know, would I start to lose inches? What can I expect?
You definitely feel it first. Well, most people, let me change that. Most people feel it first. So a lot of people come to me because of some form of injury, back issues, things like that. So most people tend to feel that the difference first, whether it's that they have a bit more relief, maybe their back doesn't get as tired as quickly throughout the day. Some people start to recognize when they need to stop or when they need to do some form of releasing in their body. So you definitely start to feel things. Like one of the things I always tell people that they feel first is your posture. So you go to the supermarket after work and you're pushing the cart because you're tired and you're just pushing the cart. And then you realize, well, you know what? Let me fix my back a little bit because Lana said that I shouldn't be slouching. And that usually happens first. Like somebody will message me and they're like, why am I in the supermarket thinking about you? I'm like, because you're thinking about your posture. Good job.
You're in their head, which is a good thing.
So, yeah, you start to feel it first. Or you've had a long day of driving and you start to feel your lower back and you know to get off of your chair and you do a quick little something and you stretch out. And then you know which exercise to do because you know what exercise helped you in class. So you know what exercise to go to at home. So that starts to happen, that awareness of feeling when your back is tired or when your back is hurting. I'm saying back, but it could be anything, neck, shoulder, knee, ankle. You know, when you start to feel that on your own and you start to think of, well, what helped me in class, let me do it at home. So that shift usually happens first of feeling something. And that usually happens between, if you're doing it consistently, that shift usually happens between 3 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
And then you start to see inches. You might see shape. Your shoulders might change shape, meaning that you're not slouching as much anymore, or maybe you're not doing anything weird with your shoulder. Your legs start to change shape. Your torso changes slightly. People usually see a difference within their rib cage in the upper extremity, whether it's that they're sticking the ribs out and leading with the ribs. or opposite, slouching and dropping your ribs down, people tend to see and feel that first. Their posture changes. Their shirts may start to fit differently, and it's not just because you're losing inches in some areas, but it's because your alignment has changed. And once your alignment has changed, your clothes start to fit differently.
Right.
So it is a case of feeling things first, and then you start to see things.
Right.
Yeah.
BIM Explorer is asking, can children participate in the online classes? What's the best age? My daughter has shown interest in yoga.
In yoga. Yeah, children can participate. I'm not doing anything too crazy online.
Okay.
If I do get crazy, I prefer to do it face to face.
Right.
But yeah, children can participate if they want to do that. If the parent wants to have that time to themselves, set aside that time to themselves, or maybe that's the time that you want to share with your child. But you can also find classes specific to children. But again, it depends on what you want that time to be. If you want that time to be with your child, then yes, children can join in. It's something simple and basic that children can do. But if it is a case of you wanting and needing time to yourself, find a different class for your child.
Right. It's so
Yeah.
funny you said that, and she asked that question because in one of my sessions, again, yoga came up as a way for the person to manage, the stuff that they were going through in their lives. And then Spirit also said, well, you should have, your child get involved in it too. So they came back to me and they said, I was just they turned on YouTube and they were just doing a routine, and automatically the child came and started to say, Mommy, what you doing? And then try to do the movement as well. And then the husband joined in. So she's like, Simone, this thing became a whole family experience. And she says they're going to try to incorporate it into their lives and how they're, going to manage and spend time together as a family. She said
That's
it's so
lovely.
interesting how that it just unfolded naturally. How her daughter came in and started, and then the husband just popped in and was like, "Oh, let me try this too," and all three of them there in a yoga pose.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned
Children follow by example.
by example. It is so true. I know you mentioned that your involvement with yoga and Pilates came about because to help manage to avoid injuries with dance. And okay, so I'm assuming you're not dancing professionally anymore,
No.
right? So you could have just had yoga and Pilates as your own personal recreational thing that you do. Why did you decide to make it into a business venture? What was the purpose or the reason behind Body Mekanix?
It came to me. It came to me, and there's some things you can't ignore.
Right.
It worked. It was. I moved back to Barbados. After I left the company, I moved back to Barbados, and I was teaching dance at UE in their fine arts program. And when I studied dance at university, Pilates was a huge part of our curriculum. We had to do Pilates, kinesiology, anatomy. And when I went on to study Pilates, that knowledge that I had already from university was phenomenal because I was just adding layers to it. And it was the depth that I got into with Pilates and yoga after I stopped dancing. I wish I had that depth and that knowledge while I was dancing because it made a huge difference in your body. And to ignore that, I think I would have been wasting my time all along if I ignore that now. It was a great combination. And I feel really fortunate that I can be back home, living in a wonderful place I get to call home, and do exactly what I wanted to do and what I studied. And it I still move every day. It's not dancing, but it's still movement. I still get to move every day. My office is a studio. I get to not wear shoes. You know? So it is lovely to study my passion and live my passion and now be able to share my passion. And it worked. And it kind of formed into a business on its own. It really did evolve. It was a natural evolution. It evolved on its own. And then one day the name popped up, and then my sister advised me to register it as a name and a business, and it just started happening. People started coming. People were enjoying the classes and feeling a difference in their back. And then I started working alongside a physiotherapist and an osteopath, and people just started calling, and it started working, and it evolved into a business.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I want to go back to when you talked about the importance of breathing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And funny enough, my week has been, for the lack of a better word, chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have, the when you talk the talk, you gotta walk it, right? So obviously I've gone back into myself, and when I settle in for the evening, right now I'm sleeping next to my altar. Okay, that's my go-to place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I spend the time there because when for me, when I'm going through these changes and I'm sleeping by my altar, the messages come in my dreams, or if I'm just at the altar still, right? As to how I should move forward. And a friend of mine, he was talking to me and he said, well, Simone, you should do some deep breathing as you're going through these different emotions. And I said, well, I'm going to try to incorporate that into what I'm doing. But that's kind of like managing different energies
Mm-hmm.
when I'm doing that. But explain to me how this deep breathing can help when a person is going through an emotional situation.
So the purpose of our breath is to get oxygen in and out of the body. Well, oxygen in the body to kind of feed the muscles, feed your cells, your lungs, movement. Your breath is movement within your body. That passage of pulling in air and releasing air.
Right.
You're purifying your body with your breath. We don't think of it that way because we've been breathing from day one, so we don't pay attention to it. But we spend, for a great example right now, we're wearing masks everywhere.
Yeah.
And we don't realize it. We take off our masks and all of a sudden it's like, gosh, why can't I breathe properly that entire time? And you don't realize it until you take the mask off. I remember when we first started wearing the mask, I would get headaches because you're not breathing fully. And that is what we do on a regular basis. When we get stressed or we get busy, most people tend to hold their breath or breathe really, really shallow because you're focusing on something else. You're not focusing on your breath. But then when you stop, very often this happens to me. I have a really busy day and then I get in the car at the end of the day and I take a big breath and I think to myself, oh, I was teaching class all day. I didn't breathe. You need to realize what that deep breath does. But when you sit and you focus on your breath for a while, it feels really nice. It feels like if I'm doing a meditation where I'm just doing some deep breathing, my skin starts to tingle. And I feel my ribs move in a different way and my heart feels a little different. And why I allow myself to feel these things, it's not like they magically happen. It's that I'm making a conscious effort to focus on how I am feeling. And when I focus on how I'm feeling, I feel very different when I breathe. And when you pay attention to that, it makes a big difference. But we don't pay attention to it. And with us not paying attention to it, we get stressed, we clench our teeth, we grind our teeth, we get headaches, we do all sorts of things because we're not taking in enough oxygen. It's not, our muscles are not getting the supply of oxygen that it needs. Which is why when we do a stretch, if you do a random stretch where you're just stretching your shoulder or something, it's going to hurt because it's tight. But when you do that stretch and you focus on your breath, it's still tight, but you feel the body starting to release because you have fed your body the oxygen that it needs. So we're kind of depleting our body of things that it needs and starving our body of things that it needs when we're not breathing.
Right.
So when we focus on that breath, your muscles benefit, your body benefits, your mind benefits, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, you sure did. You sure did. Because even when I'm dealing with someone back when we were like in front of each other and the person gets like emotional or spiritually moved, whereas it causes a reaction where they're in tears or they're getting ready to break down, or it's an actual spiritual moment. And what I do is that we both go into deep breaths together, and we go into a rhythm, whereas I allow my calmness to take over this person, and then I have them drink a glass of water, right? Pray over the water, put the intention, they pray everything in the water, and then drink it. So, and I realize even for me as the person trying to calm the other person, that deep breathing also helps me as well. And Color Me Coco, I hope I'm pronouncing these IG names correctly. She says it allows me to keep a cool head and stay calm, especially if I'm angry. I should have taken a deep breath a few days ago.
That's the thing. We don't always remember to do it because we don't focus on it all the time.
All the time. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't always remember to do it.
Yeah.
But it makes a big difference when we do it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why having a moment to yourself in the morning is really important.
Yeah.
Just taking some deep breaths. I mean, even if it's in your car, if it's when you're brushing your teeth, when you're taking a shower. Very often people say they don't have time for meditation. And it's true. I mean, you're busy, right? So as you wake up late, you don't have time to meditate. But you're going to brush your teeth, you can take a shower. You could take a moment then to just take some deep breaths.
Yes.
Because when you start to do it consistently, you feel the difference when you don't do it.
Yes. Yes.
So it's really important.
Yeah. And that is one of the challenges people have about meditation. They think to meditate is just one way. That you got to sit still, you got to fold your legs, you got to hold your hands out in a certain way, your fingers, and play up. And that's the only way a meditation could happen. But I say to people, listen, you could have that calming moment doing something in the middle of doing something.
Yeah. Well, you can have, I mean, so I do a class sometimes called movement meditation because it is lovely. Sometimes when you're meditating, you get this feeling of your body moving. Sometimes you might shift a bit to the right, or you might notice that your head kind of folds forward a bit, or your body naturally moves when you've been sitting still to meditate. And meditative movement, that specific class, you allow your breath to guide you into that movement.
Okay.
And it feels lovely because you get to feel what's happening inside, and you get to feel what's happening outside as well. And you just kind of move with your breath. You just move with your breath, and you're moving back and forth, and it feels good in the spine. It feels good in the body. It feels good everywhere. So there's always, very often you hear that there's movement in stillness. You sit still, and it's very difficult for some people to sit still because their mind is going, or they're fidgeting or agitated or whatever. But when you sit still long enough, you get to feel that movement that's happening on the inside with your breath. And it might just be your lungs moving. It might be your ribs moving. And you'll realize that your rib cage is moving as well. And your heart and your chest is rising. And your belly is rising. And your back is expanding and pulling in. And You might feel your skin tingling, and you give yourself a moment to feel that movement in your moment of stillness. And it's a lovely place to get to, but you don't have to be sitting on top of a hill to do that.
Right.
You don't have to be a Buddha to accomplish that. And it's not going to be perfect. There's some days I sit in meditation, my mind is just going mad.
Yeah.
So when that meditation is done, everything in my mind, I write it all down. I was like, okay, I need to get this out of my head.
Yeah.
So that stuff was popping into your head for a reason.
For a reason.
When there are times you're fidgeting, I mean, you see me, I'm fidgeting back and forth because, well, I like to move. So I'm just fidgeting.
Yeah.
So when you're meditating, a good practice is to go back to the 5-year-old you. A 5-year-old is going to fidget because they don't want to sit still. Well, you don't want to sit still either, so you're going to fidget. And it's not the end of the world that you did a meditation and you fidgeted a little bit. But you gave yourself that time and that space to sit still. So you have to be compassionate with that. You're not going to be perfect at meditating. First of all, you're not going to be perfect at meditating ever. Ever, ever, ever. And it's not going to come, you're not going to have it overnight. You're going to start with 1 minute, set your phone for 1 minute, you wake up, set your phone for 1 minute, and you sit still. And then in 2 weeks' time, you do 5 minutes, and you do 10, and lead your way up to 20 minutes. And you're not going to have 20 minutes every day. You might have 20 minutes 1 week, and then the next week you don't have 20 minutes.
20 minutes, yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you can't give yourself that moment. Brush your teeth, and then just stand there and do some breathing before you get going for the day. Again, doing it in the shower, that's a lovely time to just give yourself a moment and just, all right, water is hitting me. Let me just do 5 breaths there. You know, start simple, start slow. You're not Buddha.
And he had to work his way there, right?
You know, and your instructor isn't either, so don't let her fool you.
Okay, just one.
You know,
Somebody's ringing my bell. I am sorry. Oh, it's the post office. Sorry about that. Oh my God, it's time check. It's 10:51. So tell us about your services. Sorry about that. I had to open the door for the woman. So tell us about your services.
So at the studio, I teach, I do private sessions. And the private sessions, my movement, what I call movement fusion, which is a fusion of the Pilates and the yoga and a few other modalities. I do group classes as well. A lot of the group classes are people who are recovering from injury or who have had an injury in the past and they want to maintain what they have learned. So we do a lot of modifications in the class. I'll start with the most basic pose. If your back is feeling good today, add this. If you feel good, add that. And then we work up. We do beginner, intermediate, advanced. And you can do all of that within one class. There is a yoga instructor just started at the studio. So she will be doing a pre and postnatal class. And she'll be doing a beginner's yoga class. There's also yoga therapy being offered at the studio. And there is a massage therapist at the studio. So it is a nice place to come and move and feel good and to learn about the best way to move for you.
Right. And your online classes, what does that look like?
All the online classes are the same. So right at the moment all the classes are hybrid. So we are Zooming during a live class.
Okay.
Because of the COVID regulations, I am not touching or giving you any manipulations at the moment. So everybody's spread out within their mats, and then I'm Zooming the live class.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
you get to try it all.
So Dandy Dukes is asking where you're located. She's in Barbados, so that's why.
Okay. I'm in Salter, St. George, Access Solutions. So if you're on Salter's main road, there's a nice big blue warehouse, and I'm in that warehouse. If you're familiar with Salter's Medical Clinic or Chicken Galore or Mark's Auto Spares, it's in that complex.
Yeah. And for my folks who are living outside of Barbados, you can find all her classes are online, and she has PayPal available for you to pay for the classes. And her IG page is Body_Mekanix, Mekanix. I have it pinned there too. I have it pinned to the comment section. Lana, this has been an amazing experience having you on and talking
Yeah, I really
about
enjoyed it.
the fusion you've created with yoga and Pilates and what it can do for us. Um, Anything new we can expect from you online? Anything different you're working on that we can look forward to?
There are a few things. So I'm working on some on-demand classes where you can get some short snippets of class that you can do throughout your day. Not everybody has an hour set aside or 40 minutes. Maybe you just have 15 minutes set aside of just small pieces of movement that you can start doing. So yeah, you can look forward to that. Some on-demand classes coming up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think, like I was saying, that this is what time is it? 10:55. That this whole
I know where to watch.
lit right. I need to stop something here. This whole movement of the body is so important now too. I think it helping people to cope with what the world is experiencing.
Yeah.
And
And also to find a safe space to do that.
yes, we need to find these different um, aspect of movement and even our eating habits and the way we pray and the way we meditate to help us move through what we're dealing with now, because everything ain't just drinking alcohol or just to numb it, just find other ways. And this is why I started this show, Sacred Conversations, and not just having me talking running my head off about all kind of different things, but bringing people on like you who are skilled and learned and an authority on these things to talk about what incorporating these different types of lifestyles, these different types of discipline, I should say, into their lifestyle. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, and your work is important and your work is needed. Trust me, because there is not a week where I'm having a session with someone and spirit comes in and says, you know what, you need to try yoga. You know what, you need to try Pilates. Some movement to help you.
Some form of therapeutic movement.
Correct. And especially in this time where we're dealing with a lot of high anxiety and depression, right?
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for coming on with us. Of course, we're going to have you on again. Maybe we can
Thanks for having me.
a pre-recorded, because we didn't do it in her studio because she has a church upstairs. So when they were about to start and break it down, the Holy Ghost, I think we all would have been a part of that church service. So she did it at home, and I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us today about the importance of yoga and Pilates. Please follow her on IG.
Maybe next time we do a class.
Yeah. I need to. We're going to talk about that though, because they're special. Body Mekanix, Mekanix. Body Mekanix.
Yeah.
And follow her, take one of the classes, and let me know how it goes. I'll take one of the classes too and let you know how it goes. Thank you, Lana, and you have a great one.
Thanks, Simone. All right. Lovely seeing you.
All right.
Happy Sunday.
Bye. Happy Sunday, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Right.